Just to give you a brief introduction, my name is Aamir. I work as a solutions engineer at Postman, and we will be talking about API lifecycle management and how we can manage it on Postman as well. So, a brief about the agenda and what we're covering here is going to be what is API lifecycle management, why do we need it, and ultimately a demo on how we can manage the API lifecycle in Postman. Uh, I'm going to provide a conclusion as well to the talk. And if we have some time left, we're going to have a Q&A session. As Francisco mentioned, you can post the questions on Slido and we'll get to it later. So moving ahead, let's just dive into the talk. What is API lifecycle management? Well, API lifecycle management enables you to formulate a set of guidelines on how the contributors, consumers, and stakeholders of the API can interact with it at the different stages of the API lifecycle, and ultimately provide essential feedback in order to build an effective API that achieves its business goals. I'm sure you've heard many definitions of what is API lifecycle management, but what is important is how you implement it. And before we get into the interactions within the different stages of the API lifecycle, let's go through what are the different stages of an API lifecycle. Just give a brief overview about that before we get into the demo a bit later. So the first stage I would specify is planning and devising an effective API strategy before you get into building or designing any API. So what does that entail exactly? Well, what it entails is getting an understanding and clarity about what is the business outcome you want to achieve by implementing a particular API, and what are the goals you foresee with this particular API, or what you're trying to achieve by implementing or exposing this particular API to the world. There should be a particular clarity around it. Apart from that, there has to be an effective API governance strategy which provides guidelines on how you can effectively control or provide or enforce certain controls around how an API is designed, versioned, and tested. That's something which I won't go too deep into it at this point, but it is definitely one of the important aspects. Now, moving on to the API design and documentation phase, I think it's pretty clear. In terms of design, we need to have clarity around the user story, who are the participants of the API, in terms of who's going to be consuming it, and what are the different activities or operations that would form the part of the user story, or what operations a user can perform with the API in place. Once you have that set up, or you have a PRD in place or a public product requirements document in place, you can go ahead and actually start building a design. Um, that's when you can start adding your appropriate API endpoints, the parameters, the verbs, or the operations which are possible. So once we have that, uh, ideally it should conform to a particular API contract which has been agreed upon by the consumers and the contributors and stakeholders of the API. And that transparency or should be available, or should be pretty clear to all these different consumers or contributors or stakeholders of the API. How do we build more of that, or how do we increase that clarity among the folks? Is by documenting early. I know some folks might say API contract is pretty clear enough for everyone on board to get an understanding of what we want to do, but documenting early is, I feel, a much better practice in terms of creating that transparency across the organization internally as well as externally. That allows you to even clarify certain things about the API. You might understand new things or new operations which might be useful in the long run. All those identifications can be done by communicating it to the relevant folks within the team. And we're going to talk about how we can achieve that in Postman a bit later, but I think this is essential in part of the API lifecycle, having that transparency. And now you can see that I have mentioned testing 3 times, but as you already may know, And I don't need to tell you, it's a requirement at almost every important stage of the API lifecycle. Uh, Probably starting from contract testing, where you're trying to understand whether the API design conforms to the contract, adding unit testing or integration testing, and so on and so forth at different levels, right down from uh, the design stage to development and deployment. And ultimately, the versioning comes in when we have further business requirements which come on board after the API is live, ideally speaking. And once the versioning is done, that cycle repeats itself again and again, finally culminating in the API not being very useful anymore, probably, or not, or being deprecated at that point in time. So that's pretty much like a brief about the different stages of an API lifecycle. And why do we need API lifecycle management? Well, it ensures that all the moving parts that form the different stages of the API lifecycle work cohesively together. Like I said before, API lifecycle management is not just about the API, it's about the different entities that interact with it, or the people who work with the API at different stages, which basically builds into an effective API, or uh, make sure that you can build an effective API by having that kind of coordination or collaboration. And now let's go on to the demo, where we can showcase how we can manage the API lifecycle on Postman. So let's assume that the API strategy and planning phase is completed and there is clarity, and we have created a workspace, which is API lifecycle management demo with team visibility on Postman. So a question might arise which states like, how do you exactly create a workspace, based on what criteria? Well, a workspace can be created based on different criteria. Maybe you create a workspace for a specific product in your organization, or your a particular project you're working on at it for a short period of time, or maybe it also can be a particular service. It depends on your on your setup which is available, but it is pretty flexible that way. So let's just say we have the setup ready, we have created a workspace, and now we want to move from the design stage. So, uh, how do you create an API in Postman? I think it's been covered pretty excessively, I think, in the workshops, but just to give you a brief about it, you just go ahead here, create a new API, and you version it out, I would say 1.0.0. And you can select a specific schema type. It can be OpenAPI 3 or GraphQL or RAML. You have formats available like JSON and YAML, and you can go ahead and create that API. And what you see here are different tabs. I'll go through them a bit later, but what you see here is the skeletal structure of the framework, or a skeletal structure of the API specification of OpenAPI. And what you see is just a simple endpoint which returns details about a particular user. And now it's your job to probably go ahead and start building on this and adding the relevant API endpoints for your specific API. And I won't go through the process of adding it at this point, but I'll just showcase the final product to give you a brief idea. I'll go ahead and delete it. So let's just say that the final product has been achieved. During that design stage, you might have a few questions around the API specification, or you might require someone to review it in your team. Well, Postman allows you to do that by moving on to the comment mode and by tagging certain folks. Maybe I want Matt to review the design, or that would be like a comment on the entire design. And what this allows you to do is it allows you to communicate with your team members. Matt might get a notification here, as well as an email notification, which allows him to again communicate back to me. Another way of highlighting specific parts of the API spec. So there might be something which I need clarification on. That's something which you can do as well uh, by highlighting the summary. Maybe I need to change this. Maybe this naming convention doesn't make sense, and and I can just add that comment. And similarly, I can also tag the relevant folks, like I said. That way, we can highlight specific parts of the API spec, and instead of having that external platform where you probably specify parts of the API spec, or having multiple platforms which will allow you to do that, you can highlight specific parts of the API spec. You can comment on the API spec itself, and have that communication going with your team members, and ultimately reach a point where you have a design in place. Uh, you can always move to build mode again, and you can move forward to the next stages of the API lifecycle. So now that we've got the API design ready, what's next? The next stage would be, from my mind, documenting it. And although it you can document to a certain degree over here, it's now very easy to do that. But let's see how we can have a better documentation experience. So let's first generate a collection. So for some of you who might not be aware about collections, it's basically a set of executable API descriptions. I'm sure most of you are aware of it. So I'll just go ahead and create or generate a collection from these API endpoints and specifications, and I'll build a collection. And you can see that the collection has been generated. And now you would move to the collections tab. And now you see that collection has been generated with the appropriate endpoints, which is new, get all users, update user, and so on and so forth. Which basically, if you see the design, whatever you have effectively created here shows up here, along with the request and response structure. Um, all of that can be seen with the collection you see. So you might wonder what this is. This is basically the simulated response which you have specified in the design. That also can be seen um, on the collection. So that's great, but how do I actually go ahead and document this? Well, you just click on edit here, and I want to view complete collection documentation. So this is very straightforward way of adding or updating your documentation. You just go ahead and click on edit here, and I can add a summary update and save. And that way I can pretty much update. As you can see, that update has shows up here, and you can go ahead and open the requests and update specific parts of the body, and that again shows up on the documentation when you go back to it. Uh, so that's great. We have the private view of the documentation ready, but it doesn't. I need to get an understanding about how it looks like in the real world when I go ahead and publish it. Well, you can click on publish, and you can add the relevant styling. You can preview the documentation, and you can go ahead and publish it if you want to. I'm not going to go through the entire flow there, but I just wanted to showcase how it might look like in terms of publishing it. So now we've got the documentation ready. We have added appropriate data. As you can see, we have provided the information around what the collection or the API does, provided a summary, provided certain prerequisites around how you can set it up. Uh, at the end of the day, we want to make the experience of onboarding to our API as seamless and easy as possible, not only externally, but as internally as well, so that we don't have to spend that time explaining certain aspects of the collection or the API. But even if we do have that need to communicate or probably clarify certain things about the API or collection, you can again switch to comment mode, like I said, and request certain clarifications. I can ask Chris, like, uh, I need to understand, I need to clarify something here. And similarly, you can have inline comments um, and on like particular headers that make no sense to you, or maybe something which needs to change the body. Maybe it needs to be um, this particular format. Maybe I don't like camel case. I don't know. It's just a simple example. But you can have that communication going on, and you can have that, you can highlight certain aspects of the API and the requests and the parameters and all that within Postman. So again, I can go back to build mode and start adding anything I need to add in. Probably I can add new requests to the collection if I need to, but I won't get into that. That's pretty straightforward. So once the documentation is ready, ultimately this would serve as a great way of um, clarifying any concerns and providing the necessary transparency across the board, internally as well as externally, around what the API does, what the different requests or the API endpoints represent, and then we can move forward towards the other stages of the API lifecycle. Um, I would say document early and provide any questions, concerns, or any feedback. And what's the best thing about documenting early is that definitely the documentation or technical writing team would have a few questions around what is the purpose of a particular API request or a particular parameter, just to get an understanding of how they want to document it. All those questions get answered by documenting early, and everyone has that clarity. Moving on. So once we've done the documentation, we can move forward to adding certain contract tests and creating mock servers and move towards different stages of the API lifecycle. The same template would apply. Uh, I would probably add a new mock server, and I might say users mock and generate a collection, and I can basically go ahead and create a mock server. So some of you might be wondering, why do we need a mock server? Well, that way it allows you to simultaneously work on your front end and back end by creating these mock servers. And you can also test against these simulated requests and response structures. And if you have any clarifications, or if you have a few observations around uh, how the requests have been structured, or how the like certain aspects of the responses are structured, you can clarify that, and you can always go back to the APIs tab and add in any comments, or you can also ask those questions on the mock itself. So you have that ability to do that, and that way you test early and basically break the API, or try to break the API early before it's even implemented to a certain degree. And once you have clarified that it's working according to expectations, you can move towards developing and deploying the API, as and you have a certain tests added to that as well. So that's how I would move forward across the different stages, from the design phase to the testing phase, and having that conversation, having that internal feedback loop. And we can share the contract, or we can share this collection or documentation at any stage internally. Externally, you can share the documentation by publishing it, or you can export the collection or share it with the relevant folks there. That's also something which you can do. And similarly, once the mock server has been generated, you can use it internally and test against that mock server, basically. And that can be used for integration testing as well. If you're trying to integrate a particular API with this mock server. So, or a particular software you're trying to integrate with this API. So these are some of the things which you can do within Postman. You have that collaboration happening across the different stages, and you move forward. So I won't get into the different stages one by one, but pretty much it follows the same format. And ultimately, I want to move towards the conclusion of how we can implement effective API lifecycle management. I think a lot of you folks might have already seen a few workshops around how you can follow the API first lifecycle. I would suggest you can follow that, and along with it, you can have that communication and collaboration across the board, internally, externally, or using by using comments, by documenting early, by sharing the contracts, and keep that feedback loop going. Ultimately, what breeds an effective API lifecycle management is transparency, fostering collaboration, and just making communication around APIs easy. And having that feedback loop really allows you to do that. And that's what Postman allows you to do, having that teamwork and collaboration, which allows you to move forward across the different stages of the API lifecycle, and having being able to clarify some of the questions and concerns across the different stages. So I think we can move to the Q&A stage now. I'm going to stop sharing the screen.
Yeah, all right. Thanks a lot, Aamir. That was fantastic. Guys, please give him a clap in the bottom right over there if you found some useful information here. And I don't see too many questions here, so I'm assuming everybody was just a platform expert. Is that the case?
Okay.
Here we go. That's what I want to see. I mean, I found that particularly helpful.
Okay.
Demystifying.
Good.
All right,
So,
I'll go on once on questions.
Yeah, let's just give it a couple of minutes probably. Yeah.
Here's one in the chat. How to implement feature flag testing in API lifecycle. Thank you, Rahul.
Feature flag testing. So within Postman, you have an option of, you don't really have a direct option to create branches, but you can create forks. Maybe I'll just showcase that in a minute. So you can have a typical developer lifecycle by creating a fork on the collection and having that PR review flow, which again fosters collaboration at the end of the day. By creating forks, by having that amount of control on who makes those edits, you also have the concept of roles. So anyone who has editor access can directly make changes to this collection, and someone who has a viewer access can probably create a fork and then ultimately create a fork or create a pull request. So that's something which you can probably try out. Um, that I think it's a pretty clear concept on how you can, which is followed in GitHub as well. So maybe I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Again, guys, please feel free to stick around. We're going to keep this chat session open a little longer. I'm hopping on to the next call in the next track. So if you're following along on the dev track for the Postman platform, we're going to be covering the automation, integration, and orchestration next. And we're going to have Evan and Ranchana taking on that. So I'm going to hop off, but I'm going to leave this open, and Aamir is going to keep going through these questions. So thanks a lot, guys.
Cool. Okay, so I'll just be waiting. Are the mocks completely stateless by Rafael? I need a bit of a clarification on that question in terms of mocks. Uh, it's pretty much available. You can access it internally. I maybe you can provide a follow up to clarify that. Okay, I think we don't have many questions left. If I post something, if I get it later, will it be there? Okay. No, it will not be there. It's basically you're simulating the API responses. You can access the response of that by using the test tab. So whenever you hit a particular API endpoint in the mock, you can do a pm.response.json and test the response of that data and probably use certain test scripts. You have the testing sandbox available. I think that would provide a bit more clarity. Just give me a minute. I'll just share the appropriate links here. So I hope this helps you get an understanding. Like you can use pm dot send request to send test scripts on or send data with the response from the response. I think. Okay. Okay. Great. Great. I think I have a couple of minutes left. Let me know if you have any more questions, or I can close in a minute. What does a solution engineer at Postman do day to day? Yeah, pretty much getting a good handle of the product as well as the different tools that aid the API lifecycle, and obviously talk to customers, getting an understanding about the use cases and help solve customer problems, basically. Okay, I think it's time's up. So I'll just how to how do I review API versions? In terms of APIs, you can maybe I should have covered that. You can version it by adding another version from here, and you can select the elements. Probably I want to add mock servers. You can add that, and you can always move from one version to another on the API. And in terms of documentation, the documentation is linked to the API. So we can link that here. Let me see. So we can link that to the documentation. Uh, okay, awesome. I think I'll end it here. It's about time. Thanks a lot, guys and girls. Bye bye.